Greetings, Sister Kwasa.
Greetings.
Um, we know we realize that you're in Belize. Are you in Belize?
Yeah, I'm in Central America right now.
Can you tell us how you got here?
How I got here? I took a plane. I took a
Mm-hmm.
plane to get here. That's the short answer.
Mm-hmm.
The long answer is it was quite a process
Mm-hmm.
for me to be sitting here. I don't know if I would even ever imagine me years ago being in Central America. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, in Central America right now, and we'll see what the future holds. But I'm really feeling Central America right now. I was thinking Central America. I had a whole other picture thinking it was like El Salvador or something else when I thought of Central America. I just thought of a Latin country.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where I'm at right now.
When I say how did you get here, for example, someone like me that lives in Brooklyn is how do you just pack up? Did you just pack up and just just leave, or as far as your bank account, like savings, did you have to save money to get to this point?
Well, I would have to say, being from Brooklyn, you being from Brooklyn, I would say the process was how I was living already in Brooklyn. So there were certain habits that I had, and I was downsizing as a process for a long period of time. So really um, feeling and hopeful that this piece, this dialogue, or this communication will be of value to save folks some time and some steps. So some simple laser things that I was doing over the years and only increasing and downsizing. Um, I'm trained as a chef and a personal trainer, so I had a really good business in Brooklyn, New York. And over time, I took less and less clients. But as I learned to value my time more, I adjusted my prices, my savings. I shopped at a food co-op for years. I used to eat out many, many years ago a lot, and over the time, my food actually was so enjoyable. I just made a decision. It did not make sense for me to pay someone top dollar for lesser quality food. And I had such a beautiful experience with the food I prepared at home, being trained as a chef. So that was big. Did not eat other people's food. And my sister and my son, uh, we carried our food everywhere. That was a practice for years. So today, I don't go anywhere without my food. Food and living expenses I found to be two of the major expenses was food and living expenses like rent, basically. So basically, I cut off a lot. I don't know if I ever paid for cable, but cable, TV, anywhere I could look to shave off spending, I shaved it off. Now that does not mean that I lowered my quality of life, but I did not spend eventually on. So I was never a big salon goer. Did my own hair. That's a lot of money. So I do my own hair. Um, Big area that I spent was with even with or that I saved was I didn't buy any products, no products. I used the foods I was buying in bulk on my hair and my skin. So that improved the health of my hair and skin. And I didn't buy any plastics or anything that would pollute the environment. But that was also a lot of money on natural products from the food co-op and the health food store. I just stopped buying them. So I saved money on that. Zero movies. Over the years, that's something that went down. It didn't make any sense for me to go to the movies. I had so much other stuff to do, learning to garden and so on. So I traded off a lot of stuff. Those are habits over the years, and I only got more and more fine tuned. So didn't eat out, didn't spend my money on movies or entertainment. Um, Stopped buying clothes. Now, as a personal trainer, I could purchase a lot of things and write them off on my taxes. But also, other than the money it was costing me, it cost me a lot of time and energy to maintain a lot of things. So I'm still in the process of downsizing, downsizing, downsizing. That is a major drain of resources in terms of mental resources and just paying for money and rent and storage to store stuff. So those are major habits that I had. Also, in terms of savings, many people may disagree, but I made a conscious decision to focus more on healthcare in terms of what I eat and not skimp on food instead of so-called traditional um, medical care or medical plans and stuff like that. And funeral insurance and stuff like that. Some people may disagree. So I made a conscious decision to be life focused in my spending in the here and now. And I also kept emergency savings for in case something should happen. So those are very conscious decisions in terms of how I chose to use my resources. So those things also helped me to get here, being very frugal and purposeful in how I expend my economic resources and other resources.
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. Amazing. Can you tell us the environment, the subculture, the people, have they embraced you?
When you say subculture and people, well, there are many, many things that I didn't think of. I'm going to cover me because there's a lot of mosquitoes out here because it's like a tropical environment. So, in terms of the people here, um, beautiful people, usually island people and folks you find living in tropical environments are pleasant. I'm sure because of the environment and the temperature. Um, but I would have to say I was very purposeful in when I decided to make a move somewhere else of the community that I wanted to be with and interact with. I was very clear I did not want to leave New York or a city environment um, to go to another city environment or change location and do the same thing. So I wasn't so much looking to be embraced, quote unquote, by locals, because to me, as someone also that traveled years ago as a flight attendant for several years, I didn't have any illusion that number one, people are waiting for me to arrive with my fitness and my raw living foods. They're not necessarily waiting for me to arrive and to save them. That's a big misconception. Um, I would also have to say I've been very humbled um, by seeing how much of quote unquote American values, even though that those of us that have been exposed to our traditional culture, how much American ways and values we have. For example, there's a term called gringos, which many people may be familiar with, and also the ugly American. So, folks, the pace of life in this environment is slower, and people appreciate more people instead of things. That's something I was looking for, but once you're in the environment, it's a reality check. For example, you don't get internet service. You may not be able to do certain things online to connect with the rest of the world. Things may close down at certain kinds of hours. Um, in terms of cultures that are already here, this fortunately is a place that has a lot of English is spoken here. But people may have not may they have their own patois, their own language, they have their own culture, and they're not necessarily going to open you up intimately to let you into their culture. Um, I don't know that I was necessarily looking for that, but I think there are many things that we may not even consider when we think of going off the grid, because you do need community. If you, let's say, if you want to build a house, or uh, where's your water source going to come from? Are you getting water pumped in by the government? Your sanitation system. You may need neighbors, or you're most likely going to need neighbors to show you the ropes of the environment that you're not used to. So there are many things that maybe I didn't think of that the thought process started once I got in the environment. So here, this Spanish spoken. There's English, there's patois, but fortunately, there's a lot of Spanish, and also something people may not think of, the laws. You know, if you were to go to court or something, are in English. As I did my research, and I do recommend people to do research on where you plan on living, what the community is like. If you can visit the place first, and even a long visit, not just for a week or two, a long visit to see the ins and outs of that place, because it can be quite a shock for you to get somewhere and you're used to a certain pace, and you're used to maybe certain services and amenities um, that may not be available. It's like to you when you get there. There's no stores where I am, but I'm fine with that. But that was a transition over time because I don't eat processed food. So other people have their other cultures and their values, and it's very, very important to respect that when you're coming into another environment, because you need to also work with the people that are there on the ground. So
Hmm.
yeah, so the community where I'm at has definitely, I would say, made me feel welcome and embraced, and they've been very supportive in helping me to adjust to the environment. Because that's another thing. there is an adjustment. This is not city life. Even moving from a city to a slower paced city or another kind of area, it's a different environment. So it's a trade off. I was open to the trade off of quiet and knowing who's on the grounds or who's around me, safety. I was open to that. So those are some things for people to consider when they think of moving, quote unquote, off the grid.
Okay. Wow. I wanted to ask you about immigration. How does that work, and does it work?
Well, that's something I wouldn't. I knew maybe superficially about it, but I didn't think that deeply into it. If you are thinking of moving off the grid, no matter where you go, there are laws. If you're within the United States, there are laws can vary from state to state. You can be have a tendency to be very spoiled in the city and just take things for granted and not think about them. But I have experience. You're not just going to roll up in another country when there are people there before you and just set up shop. For example, visas. And visas, if you are going to be in a place after a certain amount of time, let's say after 3 months, you have to get visas. You have to get work permits, and the work permits could change depending on what type of work you're doing. You may need sponsors. I think many of us may in the diaspora and chocolate communities may be more familiar if you have Caribbean parentage. So my father's from Barbados. So I remember when people were coming over from the Caribbean, they usually needed a sponsor. Or if you know some folks from Africa, they may need a sponsor, somebody to sponsor them for work. If you've had people in your someone in your family tree or community that worked as nannies or domestic help, usually those people saw it as an economic opportunity, and they had people, either family members um, that sponsored them, or they married someone, which that's not my thing. Um, but that is a reality for some people, or they have somebody that they may work for. So you got to have a plan, or just not be naive when you're traveling, because those are going to be realities if you're looking to relocate somewhere. You can be off the grid in terms of, many of us may romanticize or have a fantasy. Um, but anywhere you go, uh, the, excuse me, there are laws that are in place for how long you can stay there, your entrance in and out of the country. If you're thinking you're just going to go somewhere and stay there and set up shop, and that the laws of the forces, the laws there in that particular country or city are not going to be aware of you, they're going to be aware. You have to be able to go in and out of the country. At some point, you may need to travel back. So you got to have a plan. And those things are going to cost you money, which comes back to, or brings to the point of savings, to have savings for all of these different things, and to do your research online with the governmental or the local agencies where you plan on going, making some connections with some people that you can trust on the ground that can walk you through certain processes. So you don't just show up, I'm here, and you haven't taken all those things into consideration before you make some investments, and could potentially lose your investments in terms of land or where you plan on staying. You have to do research and not, take things for granted or be naive.
Mm, wow, it's a lot.
hmm But it's responsibility. So when you talk about off the grid, it's beautiful, but it's responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility. For example, you know, um, you got fresh, clean water. You got to be responsible for the water, so that your neighbors have clean water, you have clean water. You don't want to contaminate or pollute the water. So things in the city where people throw uh, pharmaceutical drugs and medications and chemicals, anything down the toilet. I mean, living this way, at least my experience of it so far in a bit over a year, is a whole nother level of quote unquote natural health. Just living in nature, it gives you a respect for the environment. Because if you ruin the water, you won't have any water, and you'll ruin the water for your neighbors. And it's the same thing with your food and your environment. So as I said, the quote unquote ugly American, or the gringo, that comes in and just not familiar with the surroundings and takes things for granted, and may have a certain attitude about the environment. You can just throw things everywhere. Um, that particular attitude most likely is not going to be welcome, or um, it's not going to be received too well, in another country, in another space.
Mm,
And these may be things, especially chocolate folks, we take for granted. living in a city, living in a city or urban life where the sewage systems are already prepared for you. So I'm sure there's somebody in the sustainability summit that's going to talk about sewage systems. But that's a reality. When you're leaving the city environment, you are responsible for all of that. Your transportation, and as much as you want to be off the grid, should you come out, you got to pay for gas. So certain things may be less expensive. Maybe fruits and vegetables can get cheaper, but gas may be more expensive. And not be any bus service. Maybe a bus might come around once a day, and you got to travel a long way to get to that. So that's a reality check. If you're just conditioned and used to city life and all those amenities, when you step out of the door, are there waiting for you.
You mentioned something about transportation. How does that work where you're at?
Well, everything is in a close vicinity, so I can walk in the area in the community where I'm at to everything, to the area where we're working to learn and also to grow food. I can walk. So in this area, I can grow everything in the immediate community. Well, when I step out of this community, everybody drives everywhere. So it'll make you also want to be very close to home. But I would think that's the reason that you're, or part of the reason I would think many people want to leave the city, because they want to enjoy more of their time. Here, you get to enjoy your time, and also your time gets, a lot of your time can be consumed with maintaining the environment. But in a short answer, outside, people drive everywhere, and driving means gas. Driving means a lot more wear and tear on your car. So I'm not a driver. I'm from the city. I'm used to riding on a bicycle and putting all of my fruits and vegetables, going from borough to borough on my handlebars. This is different, and also a lot of the terrain here will bust up the tires on your bike. So there's so much stuff that you may not uh, see online, So, but I do encourage folks to research what the terrain is like, what locals have to say, people that have visited, and visit the area if you can, long term, if you can, um, that you're looking into relocating to.
Mm. Are gas prices expensive where you're at?
Um, from what I hear, they're expensive. Now, I'm in a car when I go out. But to be quite honest, I'm used to riding a bicycle, so I don't really keep up with gas prices, but I do know they're expensive, because you have to contribute to gas, whoever's car you're gonna be riding. You have to, it's not free services, and this just brings me to just thinking. Um, in the city, it's not free either. The prices are built in, and most people take it for granted, or they don't question it or even think about it. And as I understand, the Metro cards and stuff in New York is going up again, so that stuff is not free. You're paying for it, so you're paying for it here, but you pay for it in gas prices. So yes, it's um, constantly being made aware of that gas prices are very, very, very expensive. It really humbles you to where the gas and the oil and stuff is coming from. So I recommend people to go solo or ride a bike if you're in the city, in terms of transitioning to a sustainable lifestyle. If you get your mental conditioning used to that already, you'll be um, at least a bit more prepared for when you leave out. I recommend a bicycle. But again, sometimes the terrain, this is not a bicycle terrain out here in like this tropical particular area where I'm at.
Mm.
Meaning by the time you try to get a quarter to your distance, your bicycle tires may be all jacked up. It's a different type of
Mm.
terrain. I wouldn't have known that until I was on the ground, or somebody told me that in the email. I wouldn't have even really comprehended that.
You had mentioned earlier the ugly American, and I wanted you to elaborate on that. What does that term mean? And gringo, like, can a
Gringo, it's just somebody is, like I would say, like a new jack, or somebody new to the area and environment, or somebody that may not have a respect for the environment and the culture they're coming into. Um, Take for granted. Also, somebody just new, but also may also have an arrogance that they come with all the solutions, to things, or how come this is not moving faster, or just come with, sometimes, quite often, a condescending attitude, to the locals or the people that were already living there. Like, the people don't know anything. Leaves are falling me. Or they may be ignorant, or they're not advanced, and that may not be the case. It's another paradigm. And I'll say ugly Americans, I want it now, I want it yesterday, and not really having a respect for other people having a different paradigm, a different pace of life, and a different value system. People may have a different value system, or thinking that you could just pay for everything. And sometimes you come with a rude or funky attitude, or just a very abrasive tone, you may not, most likely, you're not going to get taken care of. You know,
Hmm. So where you're at, you get Wi-Fi. So you had mentioned that you're in a close.
not much of a signal at all. It's really something you got to kind of jimmy or doohickey something up in order to get a signal. But no, that's not a real signal. Maybe the phone, but no, that's not a real signal. So if you're used to chatting on the phone and stuff all day, hopefully you have some good people around you. That's the goal. I would think again with sustainably living off the grid is community. I mean, we throw the word around like we throw the word love around, but that's real. So having good relationships is key, because those are the people you'll be communicating with on a daily basis. Not much of a signal, so you'll be in for a shock if you're expecting super 5G internet speed and all that. And as I've researched, one sister that had a blog about African Americans in America, you're going to be in for a shock if you're expecting a whole lot of technology. The phones may be older model phones if you want to buy a phone in the local area. So those little practical logistics, like looking at your communication, your phone work in another environment, or your plant. You got to pay for those things if you want to communicate with the outside world, or if you have a business that relies on you being online. That is definitely something to research. I've researched it several times back in New York and here in Central America to come up with something that works, and it's slow. So you just learn to to readjust, and not be online, which is actually healthy. Not be online so much.
Mm.
Consumed with just being glued to that tube.
How's the medical facilities over there?
Um, the setup is not the same as New York. It's not as high tech. I think you can get what you need. I don't know if it's that much expensive. You're gonna have to drive to get something, but it's not savvy as New York. Again, I think to some degree I was prepared for that, because I already had a state of mind where I'm 100% responsible for my health, and put uh, savings aside should there be a medical emergency. And if we need to get to a medical emergency, you get in your car and you can drive to something. But I don't hear fire trucks and ambulances. But again, that's the environment, and that's what I wanted. Um, but I made a conscious decision to be responsible for my health. So I deal with the plants. So if you're looking to constantly go to the doctor every time you have a cold or a rash, maybe you touch some poison ivy and stuff, that's something to really consider, because you're being for a reality check. And then think, what did people do, or the ancestors do before gynecologists and before, if somebody had a sprain or had a cough, or they dealt with it. So I already had my headspace there, and the food and how you eat on a regular basis takes care of a lot of that, and sleeping and sunshine, which is another reason that I wanted to come into a natural environment, um, and also be in a community that would free up my time, allows me to get those things that contribute on a regular basis to my health. Sunshine, good food, community, good relationships that are not stressful. So that was a conscious trade-off. But you can find medical facilities, again, I would say, have savings prepared for that in case of an emergency, and do your research to see what's available in the area. But be
Mm.
prepared to bring some supplies and stuff for you if you need, I would call them ace bandages, but you can be creative with fabric and other things for spraying. But the main thing is keep your body healthy, to make it a number one priority.
Oh, wow. Good to know. What about land prices?
That I haven't researched enough, but I do recommend people, if that's what they're looking to do, to research, and again, when you to make some connections with people, to look those things up, because just like in the city, just like with anything, if you don't know anything, you know, you could get taken. You don't know what the law is, and so on. Let's say here, certain things may not be regulated, like let's say real estate. Maybe here anybody can become sell a piece of real estate, but it's just not the same setup as the states, New York, or the city. A lot of deals may come through word of mouth. So if you don't know, you could potentially get taken. You have to do your research, visit the place where you have an intention to live, or have a tight relationship with folks that you can trust, so that you're not shocked, or you don't know the laws for um, the laws behind if you're a citizen or you're not a citizen. How does that affect you if you're purchasing land, to make sure that it's legal, that whoever you're purchasing it from is legal with titles and all that. I'm not a real estate person by any means. However, many people may not be anything. You may not know how to grow food. Um, However, that shouldn't stop you from proceeding forward and being responsible to do as much research as you can. So, to the best of your ability, you don't get taken, and you make a good investment with your time and your many people looking to making a change. It's intentional in terms of the investment of your time, your energy, and your resources. So you want to make some solid decisions to the best of your ability.
Mm, good to know. Now, what if, somebody's not interested in land and they just wanted to, just fly out for the weekend or just for the weekend and see what Belize has to offer, as far as the indigenous peoples, history, is there museums? Um, is there, and for example, is there any place one can rent? And if one can rent a space, an apartment or whatever, what is the prices in Belize?
Well, I'm not a realtor, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's not my thing. This is 2017. You could go on Airbnb and you
Mm-hmm.
could research some stuff or connect with some people on the ground. But I mean, you can find places to stay anywhere. There are locals that are looking to make money. In terms of the museums and all of that stuff, after someone that's traveled a lot, I was very clear. I was not looking to go somewhere else and be a tourist for tourist attractions. Actually, it does not appeal to me at all, because that appeals to me as I'm just going in somewhere that's like, with a ugly American or a certain kind of mindset. I'm looking in as a voyeur. Ooh, look at these exotic people. Like I'm going to the zoo. That was not my intention. So, I mean, if somebody just want to go stay for a week, and if I don't know that many solarized people got it like that, just to be going somewhere, flying out for the weekend. That even doesn't resonate with me. That doesn't make sense. If I was looking for how do I want to live my life, um, this life cycle. How do I want to live this portion of my life? Who do I want to be living with? So I wasn't interested in a vacation. If I'm living beautiful, I don't want to take a vacation from life. It shouldn't be necessary to take a vacation. So I'm not interested in vacations. Actually, I was not taking vacations because there was nothing that interested me. When I worked as a flight attendant for many years and traveled around, there are a lot of things that helped to demystify a lot of fantasies. And when I traveled, I was looking to see where there were chocolate folks living around the world and how they were living. One of my first experiences was when I went to Israel. That was the first time I encountered people, chocolate folks from around the United States, that were living somewhere else and seemed content and happy, picking up another language and being proficient in another language, flourishing to a certain degree in terms of business, and having no desire to come back to the States. So that was a paradigm shift for me in terms of seeing possibilities, or possibility in terms of travel. But in terms of flying out for a weekend for even to visit, I would say do your research and put your savings aside for that, so you can save for long enough time to make some connections and to do some on the ground research, if at all possible, or to have someone that you trust or to come on. But flying out for a weekend, now if you're going out for research or whatever, but when you're thinking of relocating, you got to look at the cost of all of those things so you can build that um, into your budget. But if you want to go museums, all of that stuff is there. But rather than museums, I'm more interested in relationships with the people. And now those things take a long time to develop if you plan on living there. There are other, for example, villages that may know more about the local foods that grow, or being able maybe to potentially they may grow something in the future, and you may be growing something else. You may be able to barter, but relationships take a long time, or may take a long time to develop. Also because of the language, if there's a language barrier, and just because of familiarity, and unfortunately also because of the TV and the media Africans or chocolate folks, African Americans, may have a reputation around the world from a lot of the hip hop videos and the movies and so on. So being humble and respectful when you're traveling is going to make a big difference in how you're received, and being willing to pay folks. Um, there's another cost of living here. People may take a smaller amount and do a lot more with it here. It doesn't make them any less. It definitely doesn't make them poor because they have their ear to the ground. They live with all the resources that are here. So it just takes time to develop trust and a respect level. So it's critical to come into a new environment being very respectful to the people that already live there. Let's say, jobs and resources. They were already living there. So as an ugly American, quote unquote, or some American is just not thinking, may come in and just think of scooping up all the resources that are there, not thinking there are already people there. So it's not to say that you can't do things, but just being very sensitive to the communities that are there and also supporting them. Particularly indigenous people that are there that may have all their goods and stuff exported out, and not even perhaps eating a lot of what they're producing in terms of the quinoa and the cacao and all the tropical fruits and soursop, which people use for cancer. A lot of that stuff may be exported, and the people here may not be enjoying it. And that also may be because of their indoctrination in terms of value system coming from certain kinds of religious schools and the education system and so on. But that's another story.
Mm. What about the banks in Belize?
Well, I think it may be a good idea to maintain a bank in the States, at least initially. Um, Banking fees are going to be different. They can be very expensive for every transaction if your bank is overseas. And it's going to be a whole process. There's something else for someone to research to open up an account somewhere else. One may want to research what, let's say, retirement programs they have, because there are plenty of people. Well, let me not say plenty of people in the chocolate community, but there are folks that look to find another place, or expats, which I didn't really know the term, expatriates, or people that are American citizens and decide to move or retire somewhere else. I'm not interested in retiring. I'm just interested in having another uh, natural, holistic way of life with a community that I trust. It's a natural, relaxed way of life. Um, but there have been folks always looking to relocate to um, another environment. So some people have, there may be incentives for folks of a certain age with income that still may be coming in. If you have a business or income, there may be an incentive for you to move to another country, and the government may have set that up. So that's something to research. These are things that you would not know if nobody told you. You may just not be in that vein of a conversation.
Mm. Any tax breaks you want to share with us and where you're at?
Tax breaks? Well, I'm not a citizen here, so I don't think
Mm.
I couldn't get tax breaks. So, in terms of being 100% responsible for your own life, um, you're not going to be getting income tax, or you're not working in the States if you decide to
Mm.
stay out for a longer period of time. So again, those may be things you may be used to. Again, you may want to research um, that if you're, again, coming into another environment to set up shop, um, in terms of a business, there may be incentives if you're stimulating the economy here. So if you didn't have a business, or maybe if you were irresponsible or not irresponsible, maybe you just didn't have a business. But if you didn't have a business in the States, and you're not already in the rhythm of understanding, providing for employees medical care, or what do you call it, workers' compensation if they're injured, if there's certain conversations that you're not even in terms of being aware of tax laws for employees or for a business, you definitely want to do some research to see what that setup is, so you're not in shock. You got to think of, like, how are you generating income? Are you going to rely just on your food that you're growing? If you're not, I wasn't skilled. I was definitely growing sprouts. I know how to prepare food every which way to Sunday. But growing food on a large scale, enough for you and for a community, is a whole nother thing. It really gives an insight in terms of the distinction between gardening and farming. So these are things that some folks in the city you just may not be ready for or may not have thought of. Maybe a lot of times we just in we romanticize the idea of off the grid or relocating maybe to Mama Africa or to the Caribbean. But how are you going to be earning your income and also supporting an economy that supports you, you know, an economy that supports you where you're going to be at. You know, if there's customers, clients, if you're cutting a lot of expenses out, but you're growing and maintaining a lot of your, if you see making your clothes or downsizing clothes, food, shelter, people may have just have these ideas from building their own houses, but you're still at some point going to need some kind of money initially, and to research it and to make sure you have more than enough makes a lot of sense. So you're not caught up in the situation.
Mm. How do you get your mail? P.O. box?
Email. I mean, I'm
Mm.
sure you can set up a PO box. Anyway, those are things you're gonna have to research. A
Mm.
lot of these things, people just come up to you and say, "Well, how do you do this? How do you do that?" And maybe expecting somebody to just give them all that information. And if somebody has gone through a whole process of doing it, not that people so much mind helping one, but if someone just shows up and they don't have a certain kind of humbleness or humility, again with the ugly American expecting everybody to lay everything out there for them, that's not they might be in for a shock, because some people, there's some firms that may charge consult to walk you through the process and charge you every step of the way. So it's really important to have relationships with people that you trust that are reciprocal, where you're the person is providing all their know-how on the ground to you, and you're able to reciprocate something to them, because those people's families have to eat too. You know, they're on the ground.
Mm. Okay, it looks like you answered all of my questions that I was interested in. And I just want to thank you for your time and thank you for your energy. And I hope all is well for you in the future.
You're welcome.